and I beg to move that this House has considered LGBT History Month. Very proud to be selected to bring this debate today in what I think is a very, very important issue. And it's a very important month, but it's only 1 month, and it's not a month when prejudice should just merely stop. It's a month when we should all celebrate basically ordinary people being allowed to express who it is that they are, and frankly who it is that God made them. But it's for more than a month, and as the website clearly says, their work to educate out prejudice continues throughout the year. Because, in my view, almost exclusively, intolerance to the LGBT community, which is in decline, is steeped in the most hideous of ignorance. We must all be advocates for tolerance and normality. I have always been passionate about tolerating diversity. To me, there is no more normal strand of diversity than being part of the LGBT community. But at the risk of inducing some sighs from my colleagues, I would like to announce that I'm not gay. I'm simply not that cool. And it is, I suppose, it's either disappointing or encouraging that there aren't more members here today. I think it's an issue worthy of debate, but perhaps the absence of some members may be an indication that they don't think this is an issue worth debating because it's no big deal anymore. I sincerely hope it's the latter, and I suspect that it would be the latter. Nevertheless, it's a real honour to lead in a debate such as this in such an important issue, which for me strikes at the very meaning of the word equality and the type of issue upon which we will all be judged as parliamentarians. And I'm ashamed to say that our forefathers, not just in this country but across the world, got it so wrong. How on earth did we ever think that being gay was wrong or a choice that people made? How on earth did we ever think it was a good idea to close down discussions in school about being gay with the imposition of Section 28 in 1988, as recent as 1988? What on earth were we thinking? And how on earth do some people now think that being a boy trapped inside a girl's body is somehow a choice that they've made? I've heard it called a fashion statement. My goodness. Do people honestly think that young adults would put them through such stress to make a fashion statement? It just goes to show the depths of that hideous level of ignorance. Mr. Chairman, I see LGBT equality alongside issues like black people not being allowed to vote or women not being allowed to vote, issues where society has got it so wrong in the past. There is no matter of opinion here. Our attitude in bygone generations was just plain wrong, and we all have a duty to do everything possible to make up for it and to make sure the people who have suffered in the interim receive vindication. In that respect, I'm incredibly proud of what Scotland, and indeed the rest of the UK, has done on this issue over the last 15 to 20 years. Scotland is now a world leader on LGBTI equality and rights, rated the best country in Europe for 2 years in a row. Scotland continues to be marginally ahead of the rest of the UK, but that said, the UK is rated third on the latest index after being first last year, and I think that deserves great credit and praise. Scotland's same-sex marriage legislation is widely seen as one of the most progressive equal marriage laws in the world, specifically because of the provisions on gender identity and gender reassessment equality. However, we are, of course, committed to doing lots more. There is no place in Scotland, and indeed the UK, for prejudice or discrimination. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly, regardless of age, disability, gender identity, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion, or sexual orientation. But, and this is a crucial point, we simply cannot allow ourselves to think that because we've made all of this progress, that we have somehow achieved equality for LGBT people. We still have a long way to go, particularly in the field of transgender and non-binary rights. Only yesterday, Mr. Chairman, the Scottish Parliament became the first Parliament in the world to express a majority in support of the inclusion of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersexual issues in the school curriculum. Great credit ought to be given to the TIE campaign for this, which is the Time for Inclusive Education campaign. Scotland was the first country in Europe to provide national government funding for transgender rights. And we continue to fund third sector organisations to help us work towards a greater level of equality. But of course, we still need to do more. The Scottish Parliament will also be reviewing and will reform our gender recognition law so that it's in line with international best practice for people who are transgender or intersex. And that's why SNP MPs at Westminster are calling on the UK Government to amend the Equality Act 2010 to ensure that trans and non-binary people are covered by discrimination protections. We are also pushing for reform of the Gender Recognition Act 2004 and the scrapping of the spousal veto in England and Wales to ensure that all trans and non-binary people are fully and more easily able to access their human right of legal gender recognition, in line with international best practice. Mr. Chairman, transgender and non-binary equality is the new frontier of LGBT equality, and it is one we must deal with more swiftly than our predecessors did the prior issues. And if I may politely just refer the Minister, who I know cares deeply about these issues, to a report in The Guardian this Sunday, which outlined new Home Office guidance when sending LGBT Afghanis back to Afghanistan, when it read, while space for being openly gay is limited, subject to individual factors, a practising gay man who, on return to Kabul, would not attract or seek to cause public outrage would not face a real risk of persecution. In other words, if they stay in the closet, they will be fine. Can I ask that the Minister makes urgent inquiries in relation to this guidance and push that no LGBT person should ever be sent back to a state which does not tolerate who they are? That scenario, in my view, ought to be enough to trigger asylum. We are no better than them if we allow this sort of repatriation to occur. Mr. Chairman, I'm proud to be a member of the gayest party in Westminster. Of our 54 MPs, 15% are openly gay, compared with 5.4% of Labour and 4.6% of Tories. However, in the Scottish Parliament, the gayest party is the Conservatives, with 13% of members being openly gay, and I would suggest it is perhaps the only endearing feature. Mr. Chairman, this movement has come a long way, and I'm hopeful some members of the LGBT community will be speaking today, and hopefully they will outline some of their personal experience, which I cannot obviously muster. But we must never forget the prejudice that people have suffered for just wanting to express who they are. From the Sexual Offences Act in 1967, which decriminalised some acts, to the repeal of Section 28, which banned the promotion of homosexuality in the teaching in any maintained school of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. What an affront. We've come a long way, but we need to travel more. So I'd like to pay tribute to every member of the LGBT community who has experienced prejudice over the years. If that prejudice derived from rules made by this place, then I think this place should formally apologise. And if I have the gift to apologise on behalf of this place, then I do so now formally. And I shouldn't need to spell this out, Mrs. Chairperson, but unfortunately for some, I feel I must. A love a man can feel for a man, or a woman for a woman, is real. It is so very real and so very sincere, and it's so indistinguishable from the love that I feel for my own wife. The conclusion for everybody should be clear, and if you believe in God, that conclusion must be that that love does indeed come from God. A woman trapped in a man's body is not making a statement when expressing who they are. They simply don't feel like their body looks. That feeling is very, very genuine. It's never manufactured, and that person has the right to be who I believe God made them. They are who they are. They have not chosen to be anyone or anything, and we should all respect that. One of my closest and most loyal party campaigners in my constituency is a lady called Wilma. She has been trapped in Bill's body her entire life. She's now free, I'm pleased to say. She's confident, and she's finally able to express exactly who she is. I'm very, very, very proud of Wilma, and will always, but always defend her choice to be who she is. Because being gay or being transgender is not an affront to you or an affront to anyone's religion. The only affront left is for those who still hold these views of prejudice. The real panacea of LGBT equality is the day when there's no need for a distinct community, where we don't even think it's worth mentioning, where there is no need for these debates. I long for the day when the Backbench Business Committee would laugh at such an application as this, because the issue has been consigned to the history of past and not worthy of even discussion. Yes, of course.
I'm extremely grateful for him giving way, because he's making an incredibly important point. As an openly gay Member of Parliament, all the way through the campaign, my sexuality was never mentioned. And it is more empowering for young people to realise that somebody is gay, and that's the fourth, fifth, sixth thing that they've heard about somebody, than people realise. Does he not agree with me?
I completely and wholeheartedly agree, and it brings me to consider the point last year where the Secretary of State for Scotland was brave enough, some people may recognise, to come out and admit that he was gay. I went to meet him to congratulate him on having the courage, although I didn't think perhaps that courage ought to be needed to make such a normal admission. But I remember being struck by putting a post on Facebook and acknowledging that this chap is my political opponent, but he deserves some praise today. And I had a volume of rather, I wouldn't say abusive comments, but the abusive comments were basically, so what? Now back to his politics. And I think that said it all, that everybody who read that thought it's not even worth mentioning about, forget him, don't even give him credit for it, and get back to his politics, which is our job to argue about. So, yes, I do agree completely, and I think at the point where it becomes completely normal and doesn't even worth mentioning, then that's the panacea that we'll also reach. But society's not quite there yet, but I'm proud to say that I'm already there. Because when I leave here today, Mrs. Chairman, I won't have any gay or transgender friends. I will just have friends.
Here.
Stuart MacDonald.
Very grateful to you, Mrs. Doris. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chair, and an honour it is to follow on from my honourable friend. And can I say, I'm not sure his constituency has a gay bar as such as the City of Glasgow does, but it does have Belty Books, which is a fantastic bookshop in the town of Wigtown, run by a fantastic gay couple, Andrew and Nick, who, upon my first visit there, when they weren't entirely sure if my partner and I were actually a couple, told me that the place was very much for the friends of Dorothy, and that was my first ever hearing of that phrase. Actually, and is how I was to know that it was a welcoming place, shall we say, in that part of the world for folk like us.